Hello there and welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here then welcome. Now today I am going to be sitting down and playing with the Huda Beauty Pretty Grunge eyeshadow palette. I mean, this palette is so beautiful. I could not wait to get my hands on it, and then once it got here I was so excited. I just think this is such a beautiful color scheme. Definitely right up my alley because these are just so beautiful neutral shades that are perfect for every day, or if you want to glam it up, you totally can with this palette. So I will be doing swatches as well as 4 different looks with this palette. I want to try to use every single shade in here if at all possible, and I will have timestamps listed for you below. So let's go ahead and get started on those swatches and those looks. Okay, we have the Pretty Grunge eyeshadow palette. It looks just like that. This is such a beautiful color scheme. When I first saw this palette announced, I knew I had to have it. So let's go ahead and get started on these swatches. Yeah, these are very pigmented, really beautiful. Let's do the next 3 here. These mattes feel so creamy to the touch. I always hate to swatch the marble shades because I feel like once you do that, it's just like the pretty marbling goes away in a way, sort of. Wow, that's pretty. Ooh. Next 3. I mean, these are really beautiful so far. Wow. Okay, then we have the last row. Then we have the last row. Now this one has like a more like creamy, kind of like a flaky texture. So that one might be a little messy on the eyes. We'll have to see. And then this last shade, Grunge, is a cream. I'm not the biggest fan of these cream shadows and palettes. I just find myself not really using those. And then there we have the entire palette swatched out. Really beautiful, and this shade has like a duochrome effect to it. That's really beautiful. I can't wait to get started on these eye looks. Okay, I'm just going to have a random generator pick out each of the shades for all of my looks. So here is the first color scheme that it picked out for me. We have Love Anarchy, Nirvana, Rebelle, Rise Up, and Stand Up. Really beautiful shades. I mean, that shade's like liquid metal. I'm going to first start out with the shade Rise Up on an e.l.f. and jkissa brush, the J3, but that's just like this really fluffy brush. I got a lot of kick up when I put my brush in that shade, so just be mindful of that. But these are really soft eyeshadows. This palette, it was just so stunning. I knew I had to have it. I'm a sucker for neutral palettes. I think they are just some of the prettiest palettes. They're just so easy. I think colorful palettes are pretty too, don't get me wrong, but I just feel like with a neutral palette you can just quickly do a little easy look and then you're done. That shade blended out really, really well, so I'm glad to see that. I'm going to take an eyeshadow C brush from e.l.f. and go in with the shade Nirvana. Alright, I'm going to stamp that on this outer edge, and then I'm going to also put it on the inner corner as well. I'm going to do a little halo eye. I haven't done one in a while, but halo eyes just aren't an eye shape that I really prefer on myself. I like just the classic look where, you know, you do the lighter, the deeper. I'd prefer that on me, but I feel like I need to probably switch it up some. So I'll do 2 halo eyes today with this palette. I'll first get a lot of the pigment out on this part of my eye the most. And then I'm going to take a little bit of that shade and then come on this inner corner as well. Well, I didn't leave much space. Honestly, I probably could have just taken this whole shade across the whole lid. But it's okay, I'll make it work. And I'm going to go back in with that brush I was using before and just go around these edges, make sure that's all blended out. Even though these shades blend really easily, so I don't have to do too much work. Then I'm going to take the shade Rebelle on my finger. The only thing, I think this shade is really pretty in a swatch, but it feels very chunky. So there might be fallout with this shade, I don't know, but wow, it's stunning. That is a stunning shade. Wow, that is so pretty. I love sparkly eyeshadows. I do get a little fallout with that shade. Now, I personally don't mind that. That's why I like to do my eyes first, but I do always want to point out any fallout if I notice it. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do for the lid. Now I'm just going to do some mascara and a lash, and I'll be right back to do the lower lash line. Okay, these lashes right here are from Ioni. These are the 3D faux mink lashes from their Bridal Suite collection, Bride's Love, Fluffy Natural Flare. Okay, then I'm going to take the shade Love Anarchy on a small angled brush from e.l.f. And I'm going to run that all across my lower lash line and put that shade down first. Then on that same brush, I'm going in with the shade Stand Up. And we're just going to put that on the beginning portion of my lower lash line. Right over the top of that Love Anarchy shade. And here is look number 1, all done. Alright, here we have look number 2, the shades that it picked out for me. We have Liberty, Brave, Renegade, Strong AF, and Beauty Chaos. I love this shade. It's like a really pretty dusty, mauve-y kind of shade. It's really pretty. So we're going to start with the shade Beauty Chaos on a blending brush from e.l.f. I had a lot of kick up with that shade too when I put my brush in, so these are kind of on the powdery side, but they're just really softly pressed. It's a really pretty shade. Kind of reminds me of the shade that's in the e.l.f. Bite Size, the Rose Water one, the lighter matte shade in that palette. Kind of reminds me of that a little bit. Like the tone. Except I will say this one you can build up more. It's nice and buildable, building really nicely upon itself, so that's good to see. Okay, I'm going to take the shade Renegade on an eyeshadow C brush from e.l.f. This is a really pigmented black shade, so I'm only going to dip just a little bit in that shade. And I'm going to start packing that on this outer corner, and then I'll also put some on the inner corner as well. You know, I still might have dipped too much into that shade. That is incredibly pigmented. Wow. So I might actually have enough on the brush to just start placing a little bit over here. Well, I swear, I might as well, there again, go all the way over the eye with that shade. I think I just subconsciously just start stamping a lot out here because I think I'm doing the other type of eye look, and then, yeah. But it's okay, it doesn't matter. We're going to be putting a shimmer over the top anyway, so it's okay. Okay, we're going to go back to that blending brush and we'll start blending around the edges of this black shade. Blending on this probably will take me a little bit since that shade is so pigmented. I don't know if you can see that, but it's kind of like where I first placed that black shade. It's like it's sticking to that one spot. I don't know. I'm hoping you can see that. Like it's sticking right here along the lash line. You can kind of see like there's a harsh line. So I'm not sure about that. It's a really pigmented shade, but it might be kind of, I don't know, like it's wanting to stick there a little bit. Of course, once I guess I put like my lash on and stuff, you probably won't be able to see that, but I want to point anything out like that, especially since this is a, I want to say a $69 palette. So anything I can point out, I'm going to. Okay, that shade is not wanting to blend out. Can you see how it's doing right there? Like it's sticking, and then it did something weird. When I was trying to use more of that Beauty Chaos shade to blend it out, it's like it got really patchy in there. You see how it's like it wore away? And I know that that Beauty Chaos shade worked fine before, so it must be something with that Renegade shade, that black shade, because that's not looking good at all. And then I try to press more there, and I feel like it just makes it look worse. Like it's not blending out, and then when you try to blend it, it's like it gets really patchy. And maybe I applied too much of the Renegade shade, so I'll definitely want to use that shade again some other time and see, but I don't like the way that looks. But I just don't see like there's really anything I can do to save it because it just looks really patchy. So we're just going to keep going, and I'm going to move on to the shimmer shade because I don't know how I can really save that. I don't feel like there's anything I can do to fix that. So I'm just going to go in with the shade Strong AF. I'm just going to take that on my finger, and we're going to place that right in the very center. Pretty shade. Shimmers are beautiful. Okay, so I'm just going to do some mascara and then put the lash I have over here on this side, and I'll be right back to do the lower lash line. Okay, I'm going to take the shade Brave on a small angled brush from e.l.f. and I'm going to just line the outer half of my lower lash line. Because I have one more shade I need to use, so we'll just keep this one out here. Then on that same brush, I'm going to take the shade Liberty and place that on the beginning portion of my lower lash line. Okay, and here is look number 2, all done. I noticed that that patchiness didn't happen on this inner portion, so I'm hoping that it was just me, like, you know, I applied too much on this outer corner because I just don't like the way that looks. Now you can't see the line anymore, like where there was a harsh line there, because now that the lash is on, but I just didn't like the way that was blending out. But I will be trying that shade again soon so I can see if maybe it was just me applying too much of it. But so far, that's the only shade I've struggled with. Everything else has been fine, but I will be using that shade again before I give my final thoughts. Okay, here is the third color scheme it picked out for me, and look at that shade right there with that duochrome. That's really pretty. So we have the shades Freedom, Hope, Heroine, Fearless, and Haphazard. I'm going to start with the shade Freedom on a blending brush from e.l.f. And I'm going to start running that right into my crease. And pick up a little bit more of that shade and build that up. That's a pretty shade. Honestly, I would love to do that shade just, you know, all over the lid and then put a shimmer shade on top, and that'd be a pretty everyday look. And then I'm going to take the shade Fearless on the same brush and I'm going to start stamping that on this outer corner. I really tapped off as much excess as possible. I wanted to keep the shade soft. Keep tapping that shade in and then blending it into the crease a little. And just to keep it simple, we're going in with the shade Heroine using that same exact brush. Gonna place that on this beginning portion. I feel like this brush from e.l.f., now this is like just holiday packaging, but they make the blending brush in their regular line. That's like one of my favorite brushes because I feel like I can do a whole eye look with it, just keeping it really simple and soft. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do on my lid. I'm just going to do my mascara and a lash, and I'll be right back to do the lower lash line. Okay, I much would have preferred this look without a false eyelash, but I know the 3 shades that I have left for over here are more kind of glam and smokier looking shades, so I figured I'd be wearing a lash on that side anyway, so I just went ahead and put a lash on over here, but I would have much preferred this with just mascara because this is just so soft and pretty. But the lash I'm using is from Ioni. These are the halfling lashes in Lite, Foxy, Crisscross half lashes. Even though, like I said, these are not half lashes for my eye shape, because this is about the length that I would cut a full strip lash. So these aren't half lashes for me, but they might be for someone who has larger eyes. Okay, I'm going to go in with the shade Hope on a small angled brush from e.l.f. And I'm going to place that on just the outer half of my lower lash line. I have one more shade I have to use, and it's that duochrome. I didn't pick up much of this shade. I like to keep the deeper shades on the soft side. It's just what I prefer, but you could definitely make this as dark as you want. Okay, on that same brush, I'm going in with the shade Haphazard, and I'm going to place that right here on the beginning portion. I'm just going to continue that shade on over that Hope one because it's a lot darker than I guess I gave it credit for. Okay, and then here is look number 3. Okay, here are the final 3 shades that I have not used in the palette yet. We have avant-garde, maverick, and then grunge is that more like cream glossy shade in the palette. I'm also going to bring in that shade Renegade again, that black shade that I had trouble with the first time I used it. I am going to bring that shade back in one more time just to see if I struggle with it again, but I'm going to start out with the shade Beauty Chaos on a blending brush from e.l.f. I have to add in a couple of more shades here since the shades it picked out are all like really dark shimmer shades, and then the cream shade, cream eyeshadow. Which I will say, I think more brands should definitely get on board with Patrick Ta's, the way he does his cream shadows in his palette with the little flap over it because this shade has gotten powder all in it. Now once I swatch it out, like with take it on my finger, it's not an issue, but I do think more brands should get on board with doing that if they're going to put creams in their palettes. Okay, we're going to try that shade Renegade one more time. I'm going to take that on that same brush, but I'm only going to dip into it one time, maybe two little small taps, and then we're going to place this on this outer corner. I barely tap my brush in, I just lightly, like that. That's all I did. So we're going to see how it performs. I wanted to give it another chance because I don't want to just write off a shade completely on just the first time I use it, because it could have been like user error, so I always like to give shades another chance. I feel like it's trying to do the same thing. It's a little better, but I still feel like it's just wanting to, can you kind of see that? Like it's sticking in that one area. So I think going forward, I would either just not use that shade or maybe try it as like a liner. Like I'm not using it on a large surface part of my eye. I think that shade might be better as a liner because it's not wanting to blend out really well. But if that's the only, I'll say dud in the palette, then that's not bad, but the thing is, that's the deepest matte shade in the palette, not including that cream shade. So I feel like people who need that shade to really deepen up their look, those who have deeper skin tones, and that's the one shade that's kind of being patchy, that's not good. But it's doing a little better, but it's still wanting to stick. You can see how it's like got like this big, actually no, you know what? I said a little better. No, I don't think so. Because you can see, it's almost like a little rainbow of that shade right in there. And it's doing the same thing that it did yesterday. How when you try to blend it, it's getting really patchy. I'm going to see if I can go back and just add any excess of that shade that's on this blending brush. I'm not going to be able to really get a good blend, so I'm just going to put some pigment back into my crease to cover up any patchiness if I can, and we'll just have to move forward. So it's not going to be a really nice blend over here, but I'm glad I got to use it again, so now I know that it's not working. At least not for me. If anyone else has this palette, tell me please, do you struggle with that Renegade shade or does it work fine for you? But I'm not going to be able to really blend that around that, so we're just going to have to ignore it and move on to the other shades. I already have powder on my eye, so I don't know how this shade might do, but I'm going to try it this way. I'm going to try using this shade Grunge. Just going to take that on my finger. And I'm going to see if I can use it as a base for one of the shimmer shades in the palette that I want to use. So, that is really pigmented. Ooh. I know a lot of people use these shades as bases, so I wanted to, maybe I should have used a brush. I don't know why I figured my finger would be easier, but I don't know, a brush might be better. I'm going to take a brush and pat it in. That might be better. Got a little messy with that using fingers, so yeah, brush is definitely better for that shade. Okay, I know that looks really messy, but we're just going to use that as a base for that shimmer shade. So I'm going to go in with the shade Maverick on a concealer brush from e.l.f. It might be better to use my finger, but I'm going to try a brush and see if I can kind of keep it more precise. Yeah, let's try my finger. Oh yeah. That's definitely the way to go. And then I can kind of take the brush to go into the parts right here where I can't really get that well with my finger. That really did make that shimmer shade really pop. So I'm just going to do mascara and lash on this eye, and I'll be right back to do the lower lash line. Okay, I'm going to take the shade Avant-Garde on a small angled brush from e.l.f. And we're going to run that on my lower lash line. This is the last shade in the whole palette. So I have now used all of them. Okay, and here is look number 4, all done. Now remember, that one shade kind of messed up that blending too, so this eye is definitely not, I don't like that eye. But now that's personal preference. First of all, that renegade shade is just, I've struggled with that shade, and then I'm not a fan of those cream shades in this palette. I feel like I messed up there. I should have used a brush, not my finger, because it got too far up, and now I feel like I can't blend it out. So this eye is definitely not my favorite, but I think the cream shadow works well as a base if you know, maybe apply it with a brush and do a little bit more precise than I did. I shouldn't have started using that shade with my finger. I should have used a brush because that gave me more precision. So lesson learned on that one. Okay, I don't have anything on the rest of my face because I am actually about to take all of this off. I am filming something else today, so I want to remove all this, and I figured it'd be a waste for me to put on, you know, any blush or anything because I'm about to take that off. So that's why I'm barefaced. But I have now used every single shade in this palette, and as a whole it's a nice palette. There's just 2 shades in here that are not for me, and that would be this shade right here, the Renegade shade. Is simply because it was patchy both times I used it. It was really hard to blend out. Shades didn't want to blend out on top of it. So I think going forward, that would be a shade I would use as just like liner. Like either do a wing or just do a line above the lash line. I think that would be the way I would want to use that shade going forward. And the shade Grunge, I don't like these cream shades in these palettes. I just feel like I would get no use out of it, and honestly, if I can figure out how to get that out, I probably would pop that shade out of the palette because I don't like cream shadows in palettes. I think that's the only thing keeping me from buying the Patrick Ta palettes, is there are 2 creams in his palettes, and I feel like for me they're a waste. I won't use them. I'm not a fan of doing that. While I think that it creates a nice base for some of these shimmer shades because that really made an impact, all in all, I like powder eyeshadows and shimmer formulas really by themselves. I don't really like putting bases underneath them. There's nothing wrong with that, but so I feel like those 2 shades in the palette are the only ones that I would be kind of meh about, but that's personal preference with this shade. Some people probably really love these cream shades in the palette, and if you do, then I love that for you. But overall, I think it's a nice palette. I don't regret my purchase at all. Is this my favorite Huda Beauty palette? No. I think it's lovely, it's beautiful, but I do love my Naughty Nude palette from her, my Rose Quartz palette, the Mercury Retrograde. I like those palettes better than this one, but I do think this is a nice palette to have. I don't think you'd be disappointed necessarily with your purchase. Maybe this was just me struggling with this shade. Other people maybe don't have an issue with it. And then some people like these creams. So that's really more down to personal preference with that shade. But, you know, all in all, I'm happy to have this palette in my collection. But I do hope that my video was helpful in some way to someone out there. And I thank you so very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. And if you did, I hope you will please consider leaving a like, a comment, or subscribing if you haven't already. And please make sure to follow me over on Instagram at Jessica Dearly. And I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!